Everybody. I'm pleased to see that once again there are quite a few of you that have joined us today. Welcome to the next lesson in the STEM Lockdown Digital School. There we go. This is grade 10 Information Technology and my name is Karen Anderson. Please, a couple of things, like I said yesterday, for those of you that weren't here, please keep your cameras off, okay? I'm pretty sure, being teenagers, that some of you probably haven't wiped your faces for quite a few days, and we don't want to see the results of that. So if you turn on your camera, then unfortunately you're going to be kicked out of the lesson. Okay, so please, let's all respect each other's right to an education and just cooperate with the rules. Okay. Right, so what are we going to do today? Today I'm going to go over the gardening activity that I gave you yesterday. Remember, it was a very simple one. It wasn't in your textbook. You just had to work out how much the gardening guy was going to be paid depending on his hourly rate. Then I'm also going to go through the gym activity. And that was an activity that checked your ability to use multiple conditions in an if statement. Then we're going to have a look at radio groups, combo boxes, and list boxes, and all of these work in a very similar way. Okay. Then we're going to have a very brief look at some more validation. One of the techniques I've actually already shown you, and the other one is relevant to the use of radio groups and combo boxes and list box. And then I'm going to be giving you lots of homework. Only one of them I think you must do. The others you can do for extension to test yourself and see whether you are doing okay. I am going to go through all of them in tomorrow's lesson to just make sure that you're on the right track. Okay, so let's get started. So this was the activity that I gave you yesterday. I told you that you needed to have the user enter the number of hours worked, and then when they clicked on the button, it had to display how much Lawrence was going to get for doing his work in the garden, or for his garden service to have done the work in the garden. So let's have a look at exactly what you should have done. Okay, so this is now your solution. So you had to read in the number of hours. I specifically gave you a spin edit because then it means you don't have to do any conversion. Then this is what the case statement could look like. Now I've got two examples and I'll briefly refer to each one because there's very little difference. So your case statement goes case I hours of. In other words, you're evaluating what was placed into I hours from the spin edit. If it was between 1 and 2, then amount would get the value of the number of hours times 250, because remember that was what was in the picture before. If it was between 3 and 4, it was hours times 200. If it was between 5 and 6, it was hours times 175, and so on and so forth. Now what I've got here is another way that you could have done it, which technically is actually more correct because there is nothing between 1 and 2. Okay, so you could have said 1, 2. Okay, so Ditlof's asking, the first colon indicates the then. Yes, exactly, Ditlof. Well done. Yes. So this colon is the same as saying then in an if statement or a nested if statement. Okay, do not please mix it up with colon equals. It's also a very common mistake because we're so used to typing this that we think we have to put it there as well. So yes, see the colon as a then. Okay, excellent. So either one of these is correct. You'll see that the rest of the code is exactly the same. And in actual fact, this is probably more correct because it's 1 or 2. Okay, if it was between 1 and 4 that he got 250, then 1.4 would have been a better option. Okay, and then I've included my else here. Remember, the else isn't compulsory, it's optional. So you could have left this out completely, but then if the user put anything other than 1 to 8 in the spin edit, you would end up having unexpected output. So this is basically your form of validation. where if they haven't put anything, or if they've put anything other than 1 to 8, we set amount to 0. In other words, he's not going to get any money. And we show a message that says, please enter a valid amount. Okay. Very briefly and quickly, anybody got any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide, and then I'll check just now if anybody asked anything. You can always go back. Okay, then the next thing that I gave you was the gym activity. Now, this activity was on page 67. It might be on a slightly different page if you've got a different version of the book, where you had to get the user to enter their height, indicate whether they were a Vitality member using the checkbox, and then enter their weight using a dialog box being an input box. And then you had to use this formula to calculate their BMI, and then determine what their monthly membership cost would be using the given constant, abiding by these rules. So if they are a Vitality member with a BMI of 24.9 or less, then they get 75% discount. If they're just a Vitality member, they get 25% discount. All other users don't get a discount at all. Then you were told, show message to display whether they are going to get a discount or not. Okay, also counting which number of Vitality member they are. So the first one is going to be member 1. The next person that enters their information and is a Vitality member is going to be member number 2, so on and so forth. And then the last bit was to display what they were going to pay, what their weight, height, and BMI is. Right, so let's have a look at what was involved there. So your input, height coming in from an edit, text property converted from string to float. Weight coming in from an input box, converted from string to int. And whether they are a Vitality member or not is assigned to a Boolean variable, and we assign the checked property. So if checked is true, B Vitality will be true. If checked is false, in other words, they haven't selected it, then B Vitality is going to be false. Okay. Then we calculated the BMI using weight divided by the square of the height. Okay. And then our first if statement was, if B Vitality and our BMI is less than or equal to 24.9. Now remember yesterday I told you had to have brackets around both conditions. The reason why there's no bracket around this condition is because there's no equals anything. Remember, if we're testing for equals true, we can leave the equals true off. Okay, so therefore that's why this first one doesn't need a bracket, because it's just a word, if B Vitality. Okay, Delphi knows here that I'm checking for equals true, so I can leave it off, and therefore I don't need the brackets. But the R BMI must have brackets. Okay, and if you look at the questions with a BMI of 24.9 and less, means that you've got to put less than or equal to 24.9. Okay, then there is your counter that's counting how many members there are of Vitality. Okay, all right. Okay, so Sandra's asked a question, so I'm going to stop quickly. Where does the gym equals 1250 go? And thank you, Callum has already answered you. Wonderful. Gym was the constant that was declared here, right at the top. Okay, so I've put the block in here. I copied it from the top of the program to just put it there so that you could see what it equals. But this would have been declared as a constant right at the top of the unit where the forms var section is. Okay, so I just put that there as a point of reference. Okay, all right. So inking iVitality is adding 1 to the number of Vitality members. If we see this, I'm going to quickly test you because now I don't have to wait 90 seconds. If I see this, what is the word that should be popping into your head? No, iVitality is not also a constant, Dietlof. It's a variable because it's got the I. It's not declared here. That's all part of my question. So where is it declared? And what is that word that has to be linked to it? No, not increase. What's the other one? Inc is increase. I'm looking at this, but what is the stuff? Initialize. Yes, well done, Ditlof. It needs to be initialized. Where is it going to be initialized? Usually in this instance. Ooh, dead air. Don't make me sit here in silence for so long. In the form on activate. Yes, Kelly, good. When the program first starts, I'm going to initialize it, which means where must iVitality be declared? Global, yes. Okay, what's under what? If it's being declared globally, under what? What's it? Private, yes. Excellent. Okay, you guys are wide awake. It's wonderful. I love it. So iVitality is going to be declared under private. It's going to be initialized in the onActivate or onCreate event of the form, so that every time this menu option is clicked, if they've clicked the checkbox that says, yes, I'm a Vitality member, iVitality will be incremented. It will have 1 added to it. Okay? And then I show a message that says Vitality member number, and I output iVitality. Okay, so every time this if statement is true, iVitality is going to go up by 1. So therefore, a Vitality member 1 first time. The next time they're a Vitality member and they have a low BMI, it's going to go up to 2, and it's going to say Vitality member 2. And so it's going to go on and on and on. And then we have another one that we've covered in previous lessons. So now we get to refer back to what we did in previous lessons. #10 will put the 75% discount text on the next line. So it's going to go under Vitality member number what. So I'm going to go back to show you the sample output. Okay, so that's what the #10 does. It puts the 75% on a new line in my show message. Okay, right, so that's my if they're a Vitality member and their BMI is less than 24.9. Else, if B Vitality. So in here, it's a case of if only the Vitality was checked, then also Inc iVitality, because they're still a Vitality member. So this still has to be incremented. I still display Vitality member number being iVitality, but now they only get a 25% discount. Oh, I skipped the calculation. Sorry, we'll get back to it. Because their BMI is not less than or equal to 24.9. Okay, Dietklof's asked a question. Does it mean it has to be true? Okay, it has to be true. Remember, if we leave out the equals true, we're testing for true. Okay. Sandra, they are, from what I can gather, they are within a day. These are being uploaded to YouTube, and you can go and view them later on YouTube. Okay, so as soon as, like by the end of today's lesson is up. All the others are already up there. If you go to the Africa Teen Geeks YouTube channel, you'll find them in the 10 IT playlist. Okay. All right, so back to here. So if I'm testing for it to equal true, I don't have to type equal true. I just have to say if B Vitality. And then I'm outputting only 25% because only one of the conditions is being tested here. Just to quickly go back here, this is my calculation to calculate how much they're going to pay, which is going to be gym, my constant. So normally the gym costs 1,250 Rand a month. So I'm saying gym minus gym times 75 out of 100. So that's how I'm going to subtract 75% of the membership. Because I'm going to say whatever it is times 75 out of 100 is going to give me my 75%, which I'm subtracting from the membership. If they're only a Vitality member, so they've only selected the checkbox to say, yes, I'm a Vitality member, then they only get a discount of 25%. So the calculation is similar, except it's now times 25 out of 100. Okay, try and remember that that's what percentages mean, because you all know, you're all always looking at your marks. What did I get out of 50? Okay, so that's this much out of 100. That's how percentages work. Else, so my last one doesn't need another if, because all other users don't get a discount. So their cost gets the full gym constant. Okay, I assign because I want to be able to output the same variable for everybody. So I just take my gym constant and I put it into R cost. And then I show a message that says, sorry for you, full price. Okay, and then the last part is just my output, where I'm outputting to the rich edit the cost displayed as a currency, their weight, their height, and their BMI displayed as FF fixed. And then again, just to make my output nice and neat, I put an extra line at the bottom to separate this person's information from the next one that's going to enter their height and weight and say whether they are a Vitality member or not. Okay, quickly, any questions before I move on? I'm going to, being a teacher, as teachers, we don't like silence. So I'm going to move on quite quickly. Okay, right, let's move on. I promise you I was planning to, my mouth didn't want to cooperate. Okay, so now we're going to look at the radio group, the combo box, and the list box. If you've come across them already, that's wonderful. If you haven't, I am starting from the assumption that you've never seen these components before in your life. Okay, yes, exactly, cricket sounds. Us teachers don't like cricket sounds. Okay, so this is a radio group. Okay, when I add a radio group to my form, I go to the items property, and that's where I add what it is that I want to be listed next to each radio button. So if I remember correctly, there it is here. Here's the Delphi program. If I select this radio group and I go to the items property, okay, and I click on the 3 dots next to it, there are the things that I've already added, grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. So if I wanted to, I could press enter and I could type grade 7 at the top. Okay, but let's, instead of doing that, let's not do that. Let's add first year varsity, and then just for fun, second year varsity. Or you could have put something like masters and honors and all of that. As soon as I click OK, those are now also added with radio buttons next to them to my radio group. Okay, this over here is a combo box. Now I'm going to run the program just so that I can show you, because the combo box, you don't see much. I've left its name over here for a reason, so that you can see that its prefix is CMB. Okay, if I click the arrow next to the combo box, then all of my items are displayed underneath them, and whichever one I select is then displayed in the combo box. And this one over here is a list box. If you just look at it, okay, it looks like a radio group, doesn't it? But it has options that can be selected. And I'll show you now what happens when I actually select a particular item in any of these. So again, combo box works exactly the same way. If I select it and I find the items property, click the 3 dots, and let's add business. Okay, if I click OK, I now can only see it when I run the program, but now business has been added to the bottom of the combo box. Okay, so that's how a combo box works, and a list box works exactly the same way. Items property, click the 3 dots. I know that I'm getting out of season here, but let's add swimming, Click OK. And now I need to make it bigger, and you can see that there I've added swimming as another item in this particular component. Okay, please also note, just for interest's sake, you don't need to know this, but it also is quite nice to know that if you go to the sorted property of the combo box and you change it to true, then it puts these in alphabetical order. Cool, eh? And remember, anything that you can do in the Object Inspector, you can also do using code. Okay, RJA, I don't know what you mean by does using Notebook help. So why don't you please just expand on your question so that I can try and give you an answer. Okay. All right, so here are our three components. They all work the same, and we would use the same code to manipulate them. So now we know that the items property is what holds the words that I have typed. Okay, now the next part of this, here it is. It's a string data type. And okay, hang on, for the list box, instead of typing in the list box, yes, if you wanted to, but why would you? So, and then just to copy and paste into the list box, is that what you're talking about? Or to try and link your program to Notepad? Okay, yes, you can definitely do that. You can definitely type what you want into Notepad. You can do it for all of them. Okay, you can do it for the combo box, the radio group, and the list box. Pre-type it in Notepad or something like that, and then paste it in. Okay. All right, so let's get back. So the wording for these items is stored in the items property. Okay, it's a string data type. But now the question is, how do I, as a programmer, isolate which one of these the user has selected? So if I ask you to tell me what grade you're in, you're going to select the grade 10 option. But how do I know that you've selected that one? Okay, enter the item index property. Okay, so again, if we go back to Delphi, I want to show you something. Here's my radio group. Okay, if I find the item index property, please note it's at -1. I'm going to refer to that just now. But if I changed it to 2 and I press enter, it is then highlighted. The 10 or the grade 10 option now has a circle in it. So it's indicated that the grade 10 option has been selected. Same with the combo box. If I go into the item index property and I, let's say, type 4, then IT is displayed in the combo box, and in the list box, same thing, item index, can't find it. Okay, so this one is only going to work with us in code. Oh, that's fine. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. So the item index indicates to us which one of the options has been selected. But with Delphi, with everything, remember when we spoke about tabs, you have to set tab 0 as the first one. The same thing goes for all of these components. Delphi numbers from 0. So this first option here has an item index of 0. The second one, an item index of 1, the third, 2, and so on and so forth. And the data type of the item index is integer, which means, that we can use a case statement to evaluate which item index has been selected in one of these components. Okay, I'll show you what I mean now as we move on. So let's make sure, because look at this scary code here, okay? But if we break it down, it's not that difficult to understand. So S item, string variable, is going to get the value of RGP options dot items. Now, items is going to tell me the word next to the radio button. Okay. Then in square brackets, I say, which item do I want? That's going to be returned by RGP options dot item index. So if we work from the inside out, if the user has selected a particular option, okay, let's say they selected grade 9, then the item index is going to be 1. So now my code is going to say, okay, put into S item RGP options dot items with the item index of 1. So therefore S item will hold the word grade 9. Okay. And here I've just isolated it. I've said I index gets the value of options.item index. So let's have a look. Okay, item index equals 3 in this option because 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So the item index for this particular selection here is 3. So therefore, my code is reading RGP options.items square brackets 3. Okay, please, I'm going to say this again because it's so very important. You cannot just put the item index in the square brackets because Delphi's going to go, item index of what? Okay, remember, always component dot property, always. So I have to say radio group dot item index, which is going to give me the number, the item index of which one of these was selected. Okay, which means that items will hold grade 11. Okay, the items property is going to hold grade 11 because we're looking at items number 3, which means that S item is going to have the text grade 11. So this particularly complicated looking line of code is going to be how I can find out what the word is that's next to the radio button that the user has selected. Okay. And when it comes to clearing the user's selection, remember I showed you in Delphi just now, if I want to make it that nothing has been selected, I set the item index to -1. Okay, so that will then remove all selections, and then I can't put anything into S item because there's no text next to item index -1. Okay, again, I know you guys have been quite good at asking when you've had a question. So I'm going to give you a couple of cricket chirps to ask any questions about this until I move on. And I will, of course, waffle through the cricket sounds to make sure that it's not completely quiet. Okay, right, so I don't need to wait my 90 seconds. I'm assuming everybody's happy. Okay, here comes one. How would you know which one the user selects? So that's exactly what this code is going to do, okay? So whichever one is selected here is going to then be indicated in the program by the item index. Okay, so the item index is going to be recorded the same as when I changed it in the object inspector. That's then going to tell the items property which one was selected. Okay. Yes, it would be coded in your input, definitely, user. Yes. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've got. So here's using it in a case statement. So I could say case RGP options dot item index. So what I'm doing here, okay, all right, Jared's got another question. Let's have a look quickly. Don't quite understand where you would place the number for the item index. Okay, you know what? Let's go into Delphi here. Okay, let's add a label. Okay, and I'm going to put the code, I'm going to leave it as label 1. Very, very naughty. Okay, I'm going to change this item index back to -1. Okay, so we change it back to -1. As soon as I change it to -1, nothing is selected. Okay, then I'm going to put code in the on-click event of this radio group. So if I double click on the radio group, I'm now going to say label 1, very naughty, dot caption gets the value of RGP options, control space bar to get it finished for me, dot items. Okay, so the items property, remember, holds what I typed. If I go back into the object inspector, okay, the items property, when it operates, lists what I typed. 8, 9, 10, first year varsity, second year varsity, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what the items property holds. So if I look in my code here, this is going to hold grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. But in order to find out which one the user selected, the item index is going to tell me that. So I have to use square brackets to indicate which one was selected. Again, I have to say which component dot item index. Okay, so now what that's going to do is it's going to look at the item index property of this particular radio group and pull out the items property that's next to that item index. Okay, so let's quickly, I'm going to do this to try and see if I can explain it. Okay. If I did this, and instead of using the item index property, I just typed 2 in here, okay? And I run the program. Then, no matter where I click on this radio group, if I select grade 8, it's going to say grade 10 because it's saying display the text next to item index number 2, which is grade 10. So it doesn't matter which of these I select, even if I, yay, got the right one, okay, it's always going to show grade 10 because the code that I put in here is show the text be standard to grade. I don't know what you mean, RJA. Okay, so I'm going to carry on until you explain to me what you're trying to ask. If I now take this code out and I use the item index property, so now whatever the user selected, if I select this grade 8, then the item index is going to be 0. So therefore, items, radio group.items 0 is what's going to be put into my label. So if I select grade 8, it shows grade 8. If I select grade 12, it shows, shouldn't standards, yes, but I don't think it matters. Nobody works with standards anymore, eh? Okay, so the items or the item index tells the program which one was selected. If the item index is 0, it finds the text next to the 0th item. If the item index was 0, 1, 2, 3, then it finds the text next to the 3rd item and displays it in the label. Okay, does that make a little bit more sense? So that's how I would display the text that's next to any one of these. And these two would work exactly the same way. Okay. But to get back to this now, if I want to do something else, okay, if I don't want to just display the word grade 8 in a label, I want to ink the number of grade 8s who have selected grade 8. So every time somebody selects one of these, I want to add to my count of grade 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, and so on and so forth. Then I'm going to, in my case statement, evaluate the item index of my radio group. And if the item index is 0, then I'm going to ink I grade 8 as once again a global counter variable. If the item index is 1, it means they selected grade 9. So I'm going to add to my count of grade 9s. Okay, and so it goes through to each of these particular components. Okay, and just like a rich edit, these components also have a .items.add property or method. The add is a method that allows you, if you wanted in your code to add first year varsity to your radio group and second year varsity, you would then use the code RGP options.items.add in brackets, whatever it is that you want to add to the radio group or the combo box or the list box. Okay, generally, when you write programs, you'll see that radio boxes are designed when you create the program, but you will write code to add options to the combo box or the list box to increase choices. Okay. All right, so that's your radio groups and combo boxes and so on, and they can be used in more of our validation. I've mentioned this to you before as well. Another form of validation is a presence check, and I did this one with you. You need to sometimes check if the user has entered something into an edit before you test or before you convert it to a number. And I see somebody's asked another question. Can you only, yes, you can only add string data types to any one of those. But remember, user, you could add numbers in inverted commas if you wanted to. So you can convert an integer or a real to a string and then add it to the combo box or the radio group or whatever it is that you're working with, exactly like you would with a rich edit. Okay, so whatever you can add to the lines of a rich edit, you can add to the items of a radio group or a combo box, as long as you convert it to the correct data type. Okay. Right, so back to our presence check. I did this already. You need to put in an if statement that says if they haven't typed anything in the text property of an edit, then show them an error message and don't convert nothing to a number, because it's going to cause a runtime error. Okay. The other thing that you need to do is if you want the user to select something, so you're asking these high school kids to tell you what grade they're in, okay? If they don't tell you what grade they're in, then they've performed an error and you have to validate that. So you've got to put in an if statement that says, if the item index of your radio group equals -1, remember I showed you -1 means nothing has been selected. None of these has been selected. Okay. Can you disable certain? Not really, no. Okay, you can disable the entire component, but you can't disable certain options. You can, in your code, select it to go back to -1 if they've done something wrong, depending on what you're wanting to do. Okay. But generally, you're going to have a message that pops up and says, please select an option. And then in this instance, you can then exit again that particular procedure. So the exit would allow me in this one to, if I wanted to, I could have an if statement in here that says if no option is selected, then exit this. But that's done, because if they're clicking on it, they've selected it. Okay. Okay, so I'm glad. Sorry if I'm breaking up, Sandra. Remember, you can ask any other time. Okay, sorry, yes, it's just you. All right, so here's some homework. Okay, so on page 73 is the radio combo box activity. I'm so glad you're excited, RJA. This is what the program looks like. There are 3 options. What I'm saying is you must do this one, and it's quite a tricky one, and you can do these 2, Gold Reef City and schools, for extra practice. Okay, so let's have a look. So this is, it's called the items in, or the activity items index. So it's called items index, and you're going to code the add button on the budget tab sheet. So here's the budget tab sheet over there. Okay. And what you're doing is you're designing a program to help the user draw up a budget for their pocket money. Okay, so they have a certain amount of pocket money available to them, and you can see here the budget has been declared as 1,000 Rand. So they have a budget of 1,000 Rand, and then they are going to be adding things, selecting what they want to add to their budget until they run out of money. Okay, so if they want to go to movies, it's a certain amount. If they want to buy music or electronics or shoes or clothes or data, very important in this new normal for us, then it's going to subtract the amount of money that those things cost from the budget. Okay, so what do you have to do first of all? You have to test if they've selected an object and display a message if they haven't, and exit the procedure. So exactly this code here, okay, but it's going to be a different name of a component. So if the item index equals -1, then you say, please select an option and exit, okay? If they've entered a value in the edit, or if they haven't, so again, it's the other one. Test for an empty string and display a message and exit, okay? Ma'am, there was a T for FRM options declared. Oh, okay, Jared, it's quite a complicated concept to explain, and I'll briefly explain it and hope that it makes sense. When every single, let's say, button that you create is based on the basic design of a button. So all buttons have the same properties in the object inspector. And the same goes for a form. When you create a form, it's based on the template or the recipe for a form. When you create a new program and you add buttons and things like that, you're creating a new recipe. And that recipe is now called TFRM options. So theoretically, you could create a new program that was based on the recipe of T-form options, and it would have all of the same buttons and events and that kind of thing. Okay, but that's getting ahead all the way into matric work. Okay, all right. So test if they've entered something into the edit and exit again. Store the item description from the radio group. So we're going to use the item index property. Okay. Store the amount of money they'd like to spend on the item from the edit. So there, the edit, you're going to enter, I want to spend 500 Rand on clothes. Okay. So you're going to get that from the edit. And then you need to first check if the amount is not going to cause them to exceed their budget. So for me, I'm in trouble, because if you ask me how much money I want to spend on shoes, I'm going to say 2,000, and that's going to take me over the budget, and I have a problem. So you have to have an if statement here that says if you subtract what they want to spend on that particular item from your budget, which is 1,000 Rand, then they can't buy it. Okay, so if the amount will cause the user to go over budget, display a message indicating this, and don't deduct the amount. So your processing is going to happen inside your if statement, and then you prevent the rest of the code from executing. So again, you're going to have an exit. Okay, then determine and store if the item is essential or not. So you'll see books, clothes, and data are essential. If the user selected other, then it's uncategorized. Everything else is non-essential. So what I mean is, there are your options. Okay, so other is going to be uncategorized. Some of them are going to be essential, being books, clothes, and data. The rest are all going to be non-essential. And then you're going to have yourself some counters, counting the number of essential, non-essential, and uncategorized items, and display them in the label. Okay. And then you're going to display the item, the amount spent, and the money left in their budget, and whether the item is essential or not, in columns. Okay, remember what in columns means when it's being described. Okay, so for example, if 500 Rand was entered after all of these things, it's going to go with a message that says you cannot afford this item, and it's not going to try and subtract it from the total budgeted amount. Okay, so this is quite a tricky activity. There's a lot involved. Take it slowly, and in tomorrow's lesson, I'll explain to you what's involved. Okay, then there's a remove button as well. So if they want to not spend money on that item anymore, then they have to deduct it from the budget. But what that means is you actually are adding that amount of money back to your 1,000. Okay, so here's the instruction. I'm not going to go through step by step, just to show you that this is what you now, I've highlighted certain things so that you can then go and take screenshots or pause to make sure that you know what it is that you need to do for this activity. But you should, all my students should have the book. Okay, then you can do the Gold Reef City activity on page 75 as extensions. I don't expect you to do it for homework because that first one is quite long. Okay, and then you can do the schools one on page 76 of the Delphi textbook, the Dandelion Delphi, as an extension activity as well. Okay, I am going to go through all of them, but I'm going to focus on the budget one tomorrow. Okay, then you can read this. I'm not going to read it. While you're reading it, I just want to let you know that tomorrow is going to be my last day of presenting these lessons. I don't know if they have found somebody to replace me. Okay, now what I mean, Sandra, by extension is it's extra work. It's not something that you have to do. So there's nothing that you have to add. It's just those are other questions that you can do to extend yourself, but it's not compulsory to do for homework. Not that I can check whether you've done it or not anyway, but it's up to you. Okay. All right. And yes, so the reason why my students who are listening right now is so that I can focus on working with you guys. So please, we are going to be moving over as of next week into Microsoft Teams in a big way. And I'm going to be giving you all of your work through that. Okay, so please note, this is basically a summary of what we've done today. There are the links, as with every time, where to get the data and the book. And then tomorrow, we're going to go over the solutions to the homework, and we're going to look again at changing the properties. No more public class. No, there might be public classes with another teacher, okay, but it won't be me. And then, yeah, we've done changing properties of objects dynamically, but I want to just make sure that we go through it again as followed by the textbook. Okay, so yes, if anybody's got any quick questions at this stage, you can ask. Yes, it means, well, you can still come for extension, guys. You may very well learn extra stuff, but it's not compulsory. Okay, they will probably be doing the same work, yes. If they find somebody, I'm sure they're going to also be doing the same work. So it's probably a good idea to still follow these lessons to get extra input. Okay, all right. It's a pleasure, RJA. And I will see you guys tomorrow.